So start streaming this event. Okay, there we go. We are back. Sorry about our delay, folks, of that. We wanted to make sure that we had the widest broadcast quality possible. So, in regards to with regards to being a journalist, Michael, it's like also, do you find that also with journalism today, especially with entertainment journalism and the way that things are reported in this day and age, are we back to an old Hollywood system of the machine churning out what it wants to be heard, or are we still in the '80s gossip stage, or do you feel like that we've actually broadened our scope?
Well, I think that we are in the second era of yellow journalism, in that more than ever before, even during the heyday of Hollywood, where Hollywood would spin a story and it was taken up as gospel, we have many more platforms for that information to get out there and to be interpreted by relative amateurs. The average person on the street can take information and turn that into a story, and if they have a following, can turn it into a movement of some kind, so that a celebrity or a product is damned before it's out, or damned without any defense. So I think that we are in the second era of yellow journalism, and it's worse than it's ever been before, because no matter who you are and no matter where you're getting your news, you have to doubt the source, what people are trying to get you to do and believe. So yeah, as a journalist, I'm alarmed. I think it's really a dangerous stage for mainstream journalism, and entertainment journalism has always been questionable. We're just not sure now who's trying to influence whom.
Very interesting, because like also you were saying though, it's like in that vein, it's like it's who actually is doing the machine itself. Is it actually the corporations then that are pushing it out, as opposed to the old Hollywood system where it used to be the studios pumping it out on the controls?
Yeah, well, it was very simple in the old studio days, because it was the studio that was in charge, and the studio, and through their PR and marketing machine, they're the ones who pumped out the stories. And that's how they hid the hidden lives of so many celebrities. Now it's publicists, it's the stars themselves, it's their entourage, it's the studio, it's the distributor. Everybody has a stake in that story, and often with competing results and competing agendas. So it's very confusing now.
Yeah, and also, you have what I call the rabid yellow journalists, gossip journalists like TMZ and the sort, where it's almost turned into a form of guerrilla news. You don't know when you're just going to suddenly be affronted on the street by somebody trying to make a story out of nothing.
Yeah. And that's the consequence of having so many platforms, because everyone is competing for every eyeball. Everyone. And so the stories that are more sensational are the ones that get the eyeballs. And so, if you can't really find it for real, you make it up. And that's really what's happening. And to some degree, even the mainstream journalism organizations have been polluted by that. That's why, nightly news has a feature, always has a cute feature at the end. And that's why they do stories about their companion networks programs. The other night I watched nightly news as they promoted Saturday Night Live. And I thought, what, really? This is just not the journalism I knew, or at least that I, aspired to be part of. So yeah, it's all about ratings and money, and it's not going to get any better for a while until there's some consolidation.
And you also as well worked in the technology industry, so those skills are also very translatable with now your work in online platforming, isn't it? How does that translating for you?
Well, it's every day. I use some kind of technology knowledge when I'm pitching a show. They're inevitably asking, what is your digital strategy? And if you can't answer that as a filmmaker or a TV producer, then you just don't understand the marketplace. You have to understand technology, the platforms, And you especially need to know about predictive analytics. That's where everything is going, whether you've noticed it or not. It's going to be that way in the future because, and this is kind of a simple answer to a complicated question, but if you don't understand the power of predictive analytics, you don't know in the future what kind of content to create and what your audience is, how to deliver it to them the right way in the right place, and how to measure. So these days, as a content producer, you need to understand technology and understand inside and out all the platforms that are available to you. So yeah, for me, having technology experience fortuitously has really helped me here.
And it also helps in the marketing campaign because then being familiar with that platform, does it help you also to create a better campaign in that sense? Because it's like then who the audience who the actual consumer is of the product.
Yes. Well, and you will be able to understand what a demographic region globally needs. So somebody who's 20-year-old woman in Maine is very different than a 20-year-old woman in West End of London. You need to understand the difference between the two of them and how to change your marketing campaign to reach both of them in different ways. And you also need to understand, since there are so many platforms, not just the silo approach of marketing, which was popular, it still is popular for some companies, which means that you go after a Twitter campaign, but you don't really do anything anywhere else at the same time. And that's a mistake. These days, you need to understand every platform and how they talk to each other or how the user uses them at the same time within a demographic group. So it's really complicated stuff.
So in other words, having basically just having a Facebook page is no longer also just there. You'd have to have a Facebook page, a Twitter campaign, be able to also join your LinkedIn on there as well as also so that you're going to a broader scope of audience to be able to reach each one of the audiences.
Yeah, in different places. So for every demographic, the transit path from one social network to another needs to be understood. How that 20-year-old in Maine, what she does on her Twitter account in the morning, and how she uses Facebook at all, if at all, and how she uses texting and other forms, and whether she uses Pinterest still or any of the other platforms. And you need to understand the transit path. So if I'm being reached to by a new movie on my Twitter account, I, as the studio, need to understand how is this user going to then take that little bit of information and transit to finding out more about the movie. How do I get them to take action? And that's a complicated thing. It really is. And it's getting more and more complicated.
Well, yes, especially as new technologies are coming up. It's like then we're getting a whole different way of marketing in that, because it's like also as one thing falls out of favor, one thing falling into favor, it's like you also have to be able to go with the ebb and flow trends.
Absolutely. Well, there are companies in the industry and outside the industry that still judge their level of success by how many trending Twitter texts they had and how many likes they got on Facebook. And that's meaningless. It's really meaningless because you don't understand the quality of the user. And understanding the quality of the user, that's where you need to get to. And most people are shrugging their shoulders saying, well, I get these reports, but I have no idea what to do with them. And the next big trillion-dollar idea is someone who can encapsulate for any product, whether it's a movie or a TV show or a widget, what all of that in real time, what that social traffic is saying about your status as a product, a company, and an image as a brand. Someone who comes out with that algorithm is going to be the trillion-dollar idea.
What about also as well, because it's like with the animation industry and also the virtual world technology that's coming in as well, coming in on the multi-streaming as well and on the multi-platforms as well. It's like as VR is starting to show its face, we know that in the next 5 years VR is really going to start showing its face there. How is that going to change the online platforming environment and the marketing campaigns?
Yeah, for now, I think the default position is to look at VR and other new technologies as like big screen movie experiences were like. They need to find a place to fit in. The problem right now with virtual technology is that you have to carry a headset. You have to be kind of free and clear of obstacles and dangers. That's the obstacle. But there is a huge growth opportunity of creating communities around virtual experiences. And so how is that changing? It's going to change the content consumption business extremely well. It'll probably start in extreme audiences of entertainment, gaming entertainment, and then trickle down to mainstream experiences.
So also with your company itself, it's like, do you have like preferences in terms of working with the kinds of filmmakers and budgets that you have a preference to? Like, do you enjoy working with smaller, newer filmmakers, more established, a combination, budget ranges?
Well, I'm not a studio guy, and I don't work for a studio. I'm a production company guy. So just out of self-survival, I need to self-preservation. I need to stick to a film budget under $8 million, and really preferably 1 to 3 if it doesn't have any kind of improving factors like name talent or wonderful director, because under $8 million, it used to be. Now it's encroached lower. So let's say 5 and lower. That's where you'd have to really botch a great script, and you'd have to be really inexperienced not to at least make your money back. So as far as those kinds of projects, we're focusing in on that. Because the financing is much easier, the return is much easier to attain. Anyone who trolls in the $20 to $100 million budget range is either flush with cash from an oil well somewhere and they have no understanding of the business, or they just want to lose. You can't make your money back even if you have a wonderful film. So just talking about that, you might make a fabulous film and win awards, but you won't be in business for very long.
All right, but before you can have that fabulous film, maybe you've got the great screenplay and everything, but if you're going to get it made into the movie, the most important thing anybody has to learn is the pitch, and it's something we haven't covered a whole lot on this show. And I was just wondering if you could give us maybe some of the common mistakes and good things that people have done while pitching their projects to you.
Sure. I've been pitched to, and I've pitched a lot. And the first thing is you need to show up with a great story. Not over the top, you don't have to wear fanciful hats, but you need to be able to tell what your movie is and why this other person cares, why they should care about it. That pitch needs to be carefully rehearsed and natural and entertaining. You have to reach out, and that person needs to feel something. And there are some people who are renowned in Hollywood for being great pitchers. I actually worked for someone who's an awesome pitcher, Tyra Banks. She was amazing. And other people are notorious and infamous and famous for being great pitchers. George Clooney. Who else? Oh, my goodness. Warren Beatty. Warren Beatty is probably the best pitcher who ever existed in Hollywood. And that's not only because of their celebrity, they come in with a great story to tell. It's relatively brief. They get to the point. They grab you. And so that's the first thing. You need to show up prepared. You need to be ready for every question and answer. And you need to be confident. No, you can't be a wallflower and pitch and be successful. You just can't be. The other thing is you need to understand the financial realities and the production realities of getting that script made. You can't show up as a first-time screenwriter, and let's say you have a great script, that's what got you the meeting. You can't say, I want to direct as well. I want to direct this. That is the first sign that this person is in for a lot of trouble. Because a first-time director is so risky. An indie film from a new screenwriter, so risky. They're not going to add, they're not going to go along with these ridiculous demands. Your script is not that good, no matter how good it is. The other thing you need to really understand is the financial considerations. This production company, if you're pitching a production company, they have to go out and generate money. They need to go out and figure out how to finance this film if you haven't figured it out already. And that's a monumental undertaking, no matter what the project is. So you need to show up very realistic, being willing to say, yes, I will work with you on this script. If you have notes, I will take them and I will incorporate them and I will work with you freely. And really, the next point is that you have to be so likable for this other person pitching, because they're going to spend 2 years with you. And if they don't like you, or if you're full of yourself, or you're entitled and you think, oh, my script is going to be fabulous, great, go. I don't want to work with you, because that attitude is not going to be great for me. And the last piece of advice, if I'm still sticking to your question, is you need to understand that you're going to have to be patient. It takes these projects sometimes many years to get made, and there are very few overnight successes where you walk in, you've got a great script, and you've got $1 million. It's just this.
Yes, I know it does take time. I recently spoke with Alexander Janko, and he said the movie he's just putting out, A Year by the Sea, he had no idea when he started out that it was going to be a 9-year
undertaking,
ordeal. Yeah, ordeal almost to get it from page to screen. So yes, patience is a big virtue in this business. Now, how do you measure the bankability of a project? I mean, are you looking for it to be star-driven, element-driven, or are you looking at, maybe what's new and up-and-coming people that you would consider bankable?
Yes, well, the new and up-and-coming people means that you have to be realistic about the budget. And so the budget will be small for that kind of film. And you really have to, there are a number of factors you have to consider. So what's the audience? Who is going to, what's the platform? Where are you going to put this, and what's the message? And what kind of movie is it going to be? And where do you see the distribution? There are so many factors. So it's bankable if it has whomever, George Clooney, but it's not bankable if it's the movie he made about the World War II art theft.
Yeah,
that was a bomb, and it was a bomb because it was a passion project. It was a vanity piece, and the studio just didn't look at the practicality of it. They just looked at George Clooney. So bankability is something that is tough to define and sometimes tough to identify. A great script is not necessarily a great movie, and it often isn't. So, bankability, yeah, good question. I think that's what everyone in Hollywood wrestles with every day.
Mm-hmm.
And in defense of Clooney, let me just say that I have always maintained that every star that has put out the caliber of work that he has put out in so many films is allowed to have one vanity project that is just a flop.
So you're giving a mulligan, huh?
Yeah, you get a mulligan. You get one.
Yeah, look, he's a great guy, and people love him. He's supposed to be very nice and easy to work with. But yeah, I mean, that was probably the classic example of a movie that was made just based on a name, as opposed to looking at it practically and saying, really, you got all these stars here, but what is the story?
Or The Great Wall would be another one.
The Great Wall, yes, absolutely. But The Great Wall is an interesting story because it is so much money from China that had money to spend. So for the producer and the star, in particular Matt Damon, it was an easy calculation. He's going to go and show up at this movie, and he makes, whatever, $20, $15, $25 million on one film. The producers all make money. It's a big movie. What the heck? They do it just for themselves, not for the audience. So that's sometimes you look at the screen and you say, how did this movie get made? Then you have to look at the perspectives. That's a little bit about the kind of background of looking at the truth.
So are you finding though that there are like so that would be a main challenge though too for you, wouldn't you say? It's like in encountering like most of the taking on of projects, it's the bankability as well as also how do you market it? Or what
Yes.
other challenges would you say come with it, or what has been your most challenging project?
Oh, well, most challenging project is one that I'm involved with now. It's the screenplay based on a very well reviewed book about it's a tragic story, but wonderful story, kind of a Forrest Gump. Imagine Forrest Gump were real, a real person, but incredibly brilliant, but lived the same kind of connect the dots life.
Mm-hmm.
It's been difficult because we needed to find people who understood the story and had some kind of relationship to it. And so we needed to not start with a typical attachment of whether you start with a director and then the director attaches talent and then you go out to investors. In this case, we went directly to investors because we knew that that was really the best way to do the pay or play with actors. But it's a slog. You need to find the people who understand the story. Knew the guy who was part of the screenplay and who tragically died at a young age. So yeah, it's challenging. It really is challenging. Every project is challenging, no matter what size budget. Except if you're at the studio, it's challenging in a different way because if you're a studio executive, you have the power to make almost anything. The problem is you're trying as a studio executive, you're trying to make it to your 6-year golden parachute. You need to last 6 years. So you do not make a bad choice. So yeah, what was the name? I can't even remember the name of the movie on Mars. The guy who was a frontiersman. Oh, it's coming to me. John something. John. But anyway,
John Carter.
John Carter. Yes, that was it. The studio executive, Alan Horn, I think it was, who approved that movie, was ridden on a rail out of Hollywood because of that one movie, and he had a string of successes. So yeah, it's a difficult business.
It's an unforgiving business.
Yeah, well, yeah, it can be. It can be. Look, there are people who are notable stories of redemption. So yeah, it's unforgiving if you give up after being slammed.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Right. Now, could you give us what a packaging agent is?
Yeah, packaging agent typically refers to a firm or an agency that represents other types of talent. So you have a script, they like your script, and then they say, oh, Kate Blanchett would be perfect, or if they represent her. Oh, and I've got this other co-writer who'll come in and write dialogue for you. And I have a director, I represent a director. So the package is put together by the agency. Now, the theory is that it's a strong proposition for someone who's coming into the business or is trying to get a project made because it's a one-stop. The problem is the availability of talent, and they have sometimes in the past slipped in a star who's not right for a project or a director who's not right for the project. Another reason why so many bad movies get made. So a packaging agent can be great. It's great for someone who's just a director or a writer and wants to get recognized and wants to get the project made. They just answer all the problems for you, and they do all of the distribution as well, or they arrange the distribution with studios. So yeah, that's packaging. They're very helpful if you can get their attention.
Right, and it's like part of being a packaging agent, I guess, is if you're a good sales agent, that makes it's better as a packaging agent or not.
Well, the terms are used interchangeably, but in some circles. Typically, you know that if you're going to a big agency like CAA or WME, that they're going to package and sell. So they essentially go out and sell it to the studio, sell it to the director, sell it to all the people they represent, So they're a selling agent, and they will allow the studio, although agencies are not allowed to be producers, so they have to walk a fine line. But so they're essentially pitching for you, so they're not really sales agents. Sales agents are something totally separate. In the past, there have been sales agents in regional locations in the big 8 territories like Japan and the UK, and the sales agents are people who are on the ground selling into theaters.
Okay. Now, do you think having a packaging agent is vital to a project's success, or not? No. Okay.
And many people have done it without packaging agents. It's kind of the uninformed or uninitiated person's way to try to get a movie made, or just try to get anything made, because you start to lose. There's so many people who would then become part of the collaborative process that it dilutes whatever you are trying to create. So it's not necessary, and there are many indie films that were made without packaging agents.
Very cool.
Okay. Cool. Yeah.
Now, we were discussing pitching before. One of the most important pitches you have to make is your investors in your film. The dream is, oh, well, I'll just start up a Kickstarter account and everybody will understand my vision and they'll donate all this money to me and then I'll be able to get my project made. It's happened once or twice, but no, almost never. So what elements are important when you're looking for primary investors?
Well, there are two perspectives there. So one is, if you are someone who has the creative project and you want to produce this movie, you need to go into, just like with a pitch, you need to go into that investor extremely prepared. If you have an indie film, you need to find an investor who likes that kind of film. The easiest, quote unquote, easiest, is to find someone who is a rich billionaire who loves the topic. And I can think of a number of examples, but not to violate any confidences. There are billionaires and millionaires, multimillionaires who want to invest in film, who have pet projects. If you're a filmmaker and you want to find that investor, and you have a film about drunk driving, find groups that are financed by billionaires and multimillionaires that deal with drunk driving. It's very much like how you market an indie film. You have to go to the affinity groups in order to do it. Same thing with an investor. If you have a small film and you want to get it made, you can do a Kickstarter or an Indiegogo, and I would recommend that, because you might make a little chump change or money to finance you finding this big investor. But yeah, look for affinity investors. Singleton investors are great. Funds generally are more difficult. But yeah, that's the way to go.
Are we still looking also at family offices as well, or has family offices kind of gone by the wayside?
Not so much. It's really not. It's not big. Nobody talks about that anymore.
Yeah, it's like I figured that that like crowdfunding has sort of hit its stride over the years and kind of gone into the not talked about category, because a lot of people talk about it in terms of things like debt financing and stuff like that. So, but I was also wondering, like, when you're not directly involved with the film, like in terms of being part of the team, it's like you're working it from the marketing other side. Can you talk a little bit about like what it does regarding like co-productions, and also because a lot of films are now becoming international, it's like where jurisdictions lie and where all of that comes in, it's starting to become very muddy in that platforming world.
Well, it's always been muddy because different territories ascribe to different rules. I think that there are many more chances now for co-productions. There seems to be we're in a good economy relatively, and there are many more places trying to establish their film community, and so there's money to find and attach, to go out and look for. When I'm not involved as a co-producer or a producer, or as a producer, I just look for what my value is to the project. And typically, what happens, we're all in. When you work on a film, and less so in TV, but when you work on a film, you're a vendor, you're a contractor. You're on for the length of the film until it's produced, until it's distributed, and then you're done. So for somebody like me and for my company, we're going to be involved to whatever degree we're valuable, and we are essentially we'll take the check, but we're not involved in the distribution end.
So are you also there from that end of being at the grassroots at that stage? It's like, are you then open to the grassroots of getting in at the beginning if you love the story well enough, or is it you'd like to see something a little bit more seasoned before jumping in with both feet?
Well, yeah, it depends. I'm I'm multitasking. I have multitasked my entertainment career. In that I also write and have projects of my own. So if I hear of I just heard the other day of a great story. And I said, I want to be involved in that. I would love to be involved. So now we're talking about how I would be involved. Would I be involved as a writer? Would I be involved as a producer, or a little bit of both, or a lot of both? So yeah, look, the great thing about the confusion, and it's the Wild West now in entertainment in so many ways, with all of these platforms, you can define how you get involved. And there are so many opportunities, especially at the beginning of your career, to go to an Amazon Studios or go to a Netflix or go to many of these other new platforms that are talking about adding content, like Apple TV. There's a dearth of qualified and talented individuals to go into these businesses. So it's a great time. Really great time.
Yeah, they've started to become major players in the game. It's like, so do you find that it's one of the biggest evolutions that are happening is like the fact that like the Netflix, the Hulus, all of that are like starting to become the new big boys, where it's like now it's not only do you have an international deal, but do you have your online deal as well? Or do you find it's like, so what do you feel is the next biggest that's going to be happening in terms of evolution in that?
Well, I think that, and we've seen it a little bit, the encroaching, the slow at first, and now the just massive encroaching of HBO into the TV world and winning Emmys left and right, and more than the established networks. I think with Amazon Studios in particular and Netflix, we're going to see them getting nominated for many more Academy Awards, and just cleaning the broadcast network's clocks as far as TV. And mainly because they don't have the same rules, they don't have the same financial restrictions, and they don't have the established old boy network system in place. You go to studios or networks in LA or New York, and you say, wow, this is a lot of infrastructure to support. And you go to places like Netflix or Amazon Studios, and while they're in really beautiful technology offices, they're relatively modest. They know how to do it right, and they have the financial model to do it right. So we're going to see probably some consolidation there on the online side. Maybe Hulu will be bought by someone, or someone else will be bought by someone. So the natural consolidation will happen over time. But yeah, Amazon Studios, Jeff Bezos is committed to releasing films in theaters and releasing them online in a narrow window. Manchester by the Sea was an Amazon Studio. It's a classic example. There he was sitting with all the other people, and some of them were giving him side glances because he's the online guy. But no, they're going to be power players.
Well, yeah, they're already starting to become the power player in the industry, because a lot of the original content, people are going, okay, well, we'd like to see it as the original content on the Hulus, the Netflix, the Amazons, the Vimeos, the YouTubes, like the YouTube Reds, things like that. It's like these new players that are coming in. What is that going to be doing in terms of also budget-wise? In terms of that, because now you're not playing to, it's like now theatrical is not your only major player in the game. Basically, it's like if it goes wide on your Netflix channels, it can become actually a more grossing audience than your actual theatrical box office in a lot of ways.
Yeah, and there are very carefully designed algorithms around every project and every platform. If you look at, I'll give the HBO example because I know the numbers directly, but people look at a Game of Thrones and they say, well, how could they possibly afford $100 million budget on Game of Thrones? And you just look at the subscription levels. All you need is a certain number of subscribers paying $25 a month, and you make that money back hand over fist. And the same calculations in a different way for Amazon Studios. So this movie that we generated, what does it first do to our image as a content maker, and what does it really do as far as affecting traffic of merchandise on Amazon Prime? And we're dealing with Amazon Studios over a TV network, and it's all about the merchandising calculation.
Well, yeah, because merchandising is a very important aspect of it, because it's no longer just talking about, the film is done, it's going out there. It's like it's now also cross-platforming into things like live action is becoming video games.
Yeah.
And off spins from that.
Right. Look, I say this all the time, and I'm going to be saying this at a screenwriter retreat this weekend. It is the golden age of television, and in many ways, it's the golden age of content creation. It really is. You can make all kinds of content on your own. You can distribute it on your own to a certain degree, and you can become instantly, a well-known person in whatever you want to be doing just by posting it, as long as it's great and people find it and you're good at marketing. So it is the golden age of content creation, really is. Now we just have to kind of hope that people start making really meaningful content so that we're nudging the world a little. But it's a wonderful time to be in this business.
So what are you feeling also then at this point in time? Can you talk about like a little bit of the differences then in the financing models that are happening? Like, now that crowdfunding is going down, like a little bit of that. So now with this online content, what is that doing also again to how things are going to be financed through the online markets?
I think that it's just about who the players are. We're talking about Amazon Studios and Netflix online, two big people, and they're flush with cash. Mm-hmm. Netflix is doing really well, Amazon Studios more so. And, you just look for players that have some kind of real world tie to content or revenue generation. And those are the people who have some kind of direct cross-platform tie to creating great content. We've been talking about this for a long time. Anybody who's in branded entertainment has been talking about it. People are more likely to like your brand and to buy within this if they have an association to some kind of emotional content. If I laugh or cry or feel like I'm bettered in some way by content, I'm more likely to go just right next door or right there and buy or take some kind of action. And anybody who's a content creator who has that kind of tie is going to be financing so many great projects in the future because they're less tied to the old way of doing it in Hollywood, which is, right now it's all about tentpoles in Hollywood. It's not really about meaningful content.
No, this is something we've also had a discussion on in regards to the show. It's like that really a lot of people are sitting there saying like it's the studios versus the actual audience want, because the audience want are flocking to the indie content in there. So it's like it is very much about that. And it's like, so can you talk a little bit also then about the, it's getting the artistic world versus the business world, and talk about how that new relationship is beginning to melt together?
Yeah. And look, this has been true for a long time, that content creators who have a strong business sense are the ones that succeed. Your work does not speak for itself. And, that is the thing. in some film schools, you come out with no business training, but lots of content creation training. You know how to work the cameras, but you have no sense of what you need as far as the business of it. Marketing is the least of it, or is one of the things. Budgeting is another. Understanding the economies and necessities of distribution. If you're a content creator and you have some kind of business inkling and you want to train in any area, train yourself in how to market a film, how to write a budget, how to use an Excel spreadsheet, because that will help you more than anything else you learn about filters or quality of light. It's a necessity. So the two are blending together. And like we said before, the tie between content creators and some kind of outside revenue generating machine, that's essential. So you need to understand it and be aware of it.
Okay, yeah, because there's so many people who feel that their artistic dream is being compromised by the business goal of Hollywood. I mean, obviously, the point of making any film, bottom line, is somewhere down the line, people want to make money. Yep. I mean, if your film's not going to make, it's nice to say, "Oh, I'm just making the film for the dream of it," but if it's not making money, then that's it. Your dream's over. So, how do we get the marriage between the artist with this pure dream and the really kind of coldly calculating business side, both of which are equally important, in my opinion, in creating a film?
Well, how do you do that? I think that many of the current generation understands the practicalities of getting a movie made, and they also have the tools for being an auteur. They can shoot it on, their iPhones and edit it. And if they're talented, it could be something that really gets seen by people. So, it is the age where the auteurs can live, and they can live well, and they can, survive on whatever they can survive on. If you want to create a big tentpole, good luck. Really, good luck, because the people making tentpoles who have $200 million for the production budget and another 150 to 200 for marketing, those are studios, and you need to know how to play the game, and the game can be really dirty or disappointing. There's the classic story. It was an Arnold Schwarzenegger film. It was oh my goodness, I can't remember it. It was two writers had written this. Oh God, it was
Jingle All the Way.
No. It was a story about a real life, or an actor on screen coming to life and living.
The Last Action Hero. Yeah.
And so there are two screenwriters who wrote the original script for that, and it was so changed and, in their view, bastardized by the process that they said, "We don't want our names on this film." It was so bad in their eyes. So yeah, look, if you have a great script and you want to, and it's a tentpole, either adjust or be ready or brace yourself or something. So yeah, but it is a good time. If you want to make tentpoles, go to the studios. That's all they make now.
Yep.
Yeah, and I'm one of 10 people in the world who thought that was actually a kind of a fun movie. But hey, that's just me.
Well,
11
fighters didn't. That was the problem.
Yeah. Now, with all the multi-platforms, that people are using now, like as you said, anybody with a cell phone can go out and make a movie. How does this make it for the writers? Is this making it more challenging for writers to come up, to get their stuff accepted? Half of TV now is reality TV, or what they call reality TV. I always put it in quotes because, folks, it's not that real.
No.
But
manufactured drama.
But it just seems like we're falling on a hard time for writers to get a project, especially a television project, through the approval range.
Yeah, well, look, it's always tough. It's really always tough. Right now, if you have a scripted or non-scripted TV pilot that you've written, the first question you will be after your quick, pithy, wonderfully convincing pitch, they will ask you, who do you have who's attached? You need to show up with an attachment. If you have a friend who is an A-list star, or at least a B+ or a B, who's done TV before, and you've written a script, convince him or her to join you in that pitch. That's how you sell a TV pilot now. You can't show up, relatively unannounced without talent attached. You can't. At the very least, if it's a wonderful, new, fresh idea that everybody wants, you need to have a showrunner. And a showrunner is somebody of rank who has been an executive producer and writer on another show that did reasonably well. You need to have a showrunner. So that's how you do it as in TV. In film, you need to write a great script. And writing is a little bit like singing. You're not sure how good you are until enough people have told you one way or the other. And that's just the reality of it. When there are a lot of people you'll meet at writing conferences who say, oh, yes, everybody tells me I'm a great writer. And then you read their thing and you say, well, not so much. And then there are these relatively quiet, unassuming people who have written fantastic scripts that don't get made because they don't have the business acumen. So, yeah, look, it's tough for a writer. It's always tough for a writer. But the great thing about a writer is that, you can write alone. Your hours are flexible. Unless you're on set, and in the U.S. they don't want you on set, your job is done. And if it's a big studio paying you, you get a reasonably good salary. And if you deal with that as well as you did with any film budget you might have had control of, you'll live a good life. If you want to have control in TV or film, go to Europe. The writer is part of the process.
Mm-hmm.
I wish we would adopt more of that here, honestly.
Yeah, me too. But the system didn't work that way. It grew up in the days of the big studios where writers were sitting in essentially a steno pool pumping out stuff.
Yep.
They'd pump out B movies because they needed to put out 25 a year. And so writers were never respected. Whereas in Europe, it was always the home of the auteur.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's get into distribution a little bit. How do you mitigate risk management when you're trying to distribute a project?
That is a simple question with a complicated answer. I think the way to mitigate distribution issues is to have a great local agent representing your project wherever you're selling this into. You need to have somebody who understands the territory, the culture, the language. You're not selling it into these territories yourself. And distribution, if it's an indie film, you need to understand affinity marketing. There are a lot of studios. I think WPA, Warner Pictures.
Yeah.
Anyway, yes, it's no longer with us.
Yeah.
They were distributing using a studio formula. They would go in and blast theater owners and say, hey, you need to take this along with our tentpole. And it didn't work. Indie films and small films that people are making now on their iPhones need to be distributed using the old-time successful indie distribution model. If you had a karate film, you went to karate studios and sold into their heads. You said, hey, I've got this great film. Can I put my poster in your window? And same thing with anything else. If you're doing a story about crocheting, you go to every crochet group and club across the country, and you throw crocheting parties in people's houses. That's how you distribute it. And I think to a large degree, except in the online Amazon Studios picture, I think that if you're going to distribute it on your own, good luck. But understand that it's going to be a tough slog. It really is tough. But there are independent people who are willing to distribute your film if they love it.
Okay.
I don't know.
Now,
Yeah, no, that does work.
Yeah. there are certain protections as well that you need to take if you're going to be distributing on your own. Uh, you know, what are your feelings on the proof of concept, and what would you like to see from packages that are, can help people to fulfill their visions?
I think we're probably talking about two different things. If you're distributing, you've got a finished product.
Yes.
You've got a film, and your film should be that's your proof of concept. You've got a film, how it tracks, you have data about the target audience and how they respond to this type of content. You've done enough research so when you go in, you understand the marketplace. But once again, I caution against distributing on your own unless you're distributing online. Then it's easy.
Yeah.
If you're distributing a finished film somewhere, you need to have a local agent who's helping you through it. You just do.
I also wanted to ask you, there was this place called Cinema Welcome at one point in time who did screeners and stuff like that in private settings for distributors as well as also producers, showing proof of concepts from beginners as well at the beginning, so that you could show people the proof of what you wanted for your investors, as well as also when they had a finished product that they wanted to kind of get it to a distributor privately before test marketing it out to people, or to get pre-sales, they would have that. Are there any such platforms that are now available to people for previewing projects privately, where they have to come in and they have to, like, basically the way that Cinema Welcome is they would invite the distributor would have a certain key code to be able to get into their you'd watch the film at that particular screening moment, and then it'd be taken off of the network, so then that way there wouldn't be any chances of copyright infringement and false distribution, shall we say. That I would like to call it false distribution. Let's call it what it is, pirating.
Yes.
Which I am anti-pirate.
Yeah, yes, we all are. I don't believe anyone has replaced that system. And I believe, but this is really secondhand, so don't take me as gospel. I think that it has been displaced. That I think that the advantages have far outweighed the advantages of doing it that way with screeners, mainly because the percentage of non-delivery was way too high. So you'd get a trailer of a project that would not be completed, that needed completion funds, and so. But that is really secondhand information, and so don't take it as gospel. But I really don't. I don't think that there is an effective method in place to replace that.
Okay. Well, now today, as we become more, global with finance and the productions, how do you feel that is evolving the filmmaking process? And as it becomes more global, does it change the demand for, like both what filmmakers and as us, the audience, want to see?
So are you talking about
audience tastes?
Yeah, audience tastes, yes.
Can you restate your question, because I'm not sure I understood?
Okay, it's like as we're becoming more global with finance and productions, how's that evolving the filmmaking process? And do you feel that as we are becoming more global, does it change what is being demanded from both filmmakers and audiences' tastes?
Yes, and in that there have always been a group of indie filmmakers who have been following the money, and to some degree, novice screenwriters have written scripts that were in fashion. There are a number of people, and I know a screenwriter in New York who has been pursuing Chinese money and is now writing Chinese American films. And I know somebody who runs the large Indian company with bases here in New York as well as in Mumbai, and they're looking for co-production projects, a lot of them. So then you're tempted as a content producer to create something that works. So, look, from the business side, it makes sense to go where the money is. From the creative side, there's a little bit of, it leaves a bad taste in some people's mouths. that we're content creators and we should really pursuing good stories and good films and not where the money is. But look, I don't judge people on either side because I would say that I'm kind of straddling the fence there. But yes, there's a lot of money. There was a time when there was so much money in Dubai that people were going there in droves until Dubai decided it didn't have money anymore. And now it's Abu Dhabi.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a great influence there. And I think to some degree that's an outlet for creative talent. So there are positive stories there. Yeah. Look, for me, the bottom line is at the end of the day, have we nudged the world a little with meaningful stories? And so if we can come up with meaningful stories based in China, not the Great Wall, and or in Mumbai, then God bless you. I think it's a great thing.
Okay. Cool.
I've been kind of saying for a while too, to get back to the tentpole movie concept that studios seem to be so much in love with, and it has been my personal contention that it is the smaller independent movie that's the real future for Hollywood. But are the tentpoles going to stay stable, or do you think that market is starting to collapse a little bit? Because I'm seeing more and more of these tentpole movies that are not cutting it at the box office.
I think they still have a good amount of life in them. And as long as you have associated creative products like Marvel that keeps finding new ways to bring out new characters and tie them into existing product, I think it's brilliant. It's brilliant from a tentpole franchise perspective. And that's all the studios do. I don't think they're going to die anytime soon. But I do think that the system around those films is going to change, and it has to, and it's already starting to change. The staff sizes are going down, the offices are diminishing in size and lavish expenditures. So I think that's what you'll see. You'll see the business changing around them. They'll still be tentpole because people want them, and especially young people. They want to go to the theater for now. They want to go to the theater and sit there and hold hands with whomever and
not watch the movie.
Not the movie. Yes.
Well, not necessarily not watch the movie, but not have to sit there and really pay attention to the movie. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, because they're formulaic. You know that they are more formulaic than the standard script. At page 15 or page 25. There's going to be some kind of cataclysmic event that's going to thrust the characters into action. There's the midway point where there's no return, and there's the page 90 where all hope is lost, and the last act that resolves everything, and then there's the happy ending. So, yeah, as an audience member, oh, yeah, okay. Instinctively, I know that I'm going to come to the page 90 where my hero is near death. And people like the formulaic stuff. And kids love the explosions. The problem that the tentpoles are having, and this might be their extinction, is that how much of planet Earth can you destroy? All of these tentpoles, the next one is bigger than the last, and they've destroyed a city. Now they've destroyed the planet. And what's next? The solar system? I mean, how do you really conceptualize that? So that I think the content itself is the tentpole's death, unless they find new franchises and a new way to do franchises.
True. It's like bringing them closer towards a more indie-ish market, an indie tentpole.
Yeah. But along that line too, with the tentpoles too, there's been a resurgence once again. It seems like it resurges every 15 to 20 years ago in 3D. Now, is this a gimmick, or is the 3D actually becoming a more stable part of the Hollywood economy now?
It is. It's a huge revenue maker. 3D back in the 1950s was horrible and clunky, and the glasses were bad. The technology is so much better, and there are a few signature companies now in LA that are doing bang-up business doing 3D. And it's a way for the theaters to charge more and the studios to charge more. And so, yeah, 3D and tentpoles are here to stay, I think. until the tinfoil goes away. But I don't see that happening anytime soon. But yeah, 3D and whatever else can whatever is the next 3D. I have no idea what that might be, but
virtual reality. But we'll have smaller glasses for those. Eventually, eventually they're going to bring down that entire helmet to something that people could actually wear that is more wearable tech.
It'll look like Ray-Bans.
Sure, and that could very well be essentially taking what the amusement parks have done and turning that into a theater experience. But it has to be made much more expensive or inexpensive. And you have to add things like smells and motion seats and things like that if you really want it to be virtual.
Well, they've already started dining room theaters there, which is also an interesting thing, turning movie theaters into dinner theater, which I thought was an interesting thing that's been happening, is a great trend as well. But also I wanted to talk a little bit also, as well as we're at it, dealing with actually the deliverables themselves, because also as we have been changing this, the deliverables are also changing, and the way that distribution is dealing with the relationship and production as well. Because it used to be, okay, you had your deliverables, you brought it to the distributor would make the whole package and stuff like that, get their PR people working, and it would be out there. Now it's much more interactive, and you also have distributors and aggregators to choose from as well in there as content creators. We also have a bunch of other options, as well as also how much of that comes now on we the filmmaker. So how does that change then the deliverables that happen?
Well, for the filmmaker, the deliverables have remained relatively the same. You have to deliver a great product on time, under budget. Those are the big things you hear all the time. As far as the type of format and it's dictated by the platform and really dictated by the distributor. But they handhold the filmmakers. If you're a filmmaker or a production company and they want your product, they will lead you through the process. You just have to understand what every part of the process is. So the deliverables haven't really changed. Really, the one is great product, great content, on time, under budget.
And are they also looking at the marketing materials still remaining the same? Because it's like now that the filmmakers are actually getting into we'll make the poster and stuff like that. It's like, I realize that distributors will still want to put their hands into it. But aggregators, for example, have said, well, sometimes we'll take the production company's poster if it's a really great poster, or we'll get you in touch with a poster artist. Of course, pay for service and stuff like that. But it's like, it's leaving production companies with a large P&A. Is the P&A growing in the budget?
Well, for tentpoles it is. For tentpoles, definitely. But for indie films, they're pretty much, it's a percentage of budget. And I think that in many ways P&A is going down. So, yeah. And it's the filmmaker's battle to try to keep it at a sane level, or go back to the investor and find the money there for P&A. There are also funds, P&A funds, some that have started and not done well, but there are new P&A funds coming up, so that it keeps some of the control in the filmmaker's hands. But I have never heard of, maybe an aggregator, but I've never heard firsthand of a distributor taking a production company's poster and not massively changing it.
Yes.
Because the practicality is for now, the studios have a huge marketing budget and a huge, relative to the project, and a huge staff doing marketing. And there is no way a director of marketing is going to say, oh yeah, I'll take this production company's budget because that makes him or her look less affected. So it's just the practical matter of self-survival.
Well, which makes entire sense, because it's like, then that it's like, of course, as a distributor, they want to have their hand in it. They have a hand also in the final cut as well. But this is also where it's like it's like when you're looking at it from productions, it's like, how would you decide as a filmmaker a distributor versus an aggregator?
There are so many good stories and bad stories about aggregators, so I've never used them. So I really wouldn't know. and I don't want to besmirch the entire segment. Distributors, it's relatively easy to predict what they want and how they want it and when they want it. But I've got to say, before we move on to something else, that having a poster and having slick marketing materials is a really good thing when you're approaching investors. I always do a one sheet. I always sometimes do a sizzle, just to project tone and for people who can't imagine it themselves. So that is an essential expense. It's not necessary for a distributor, but maybe if you're using a distributor preview system, but I've never used them.
Interesting. And do you also find, though, that Machinima is to be a viable platform or a future viable platform in terms of filmmaking?
Yeah, why not? Just add it to the list. Again, it's determined by finding people who are signature users and content creators for it. So it's in theory, yes, absolutely. Are there people who are signature developers? I'm not sure.
Mm-hmm. So it's like in regards to that, it's like I had just one other tiny question though as well, because I'm sure that you've been to the American film market as well as to also other film festivals as well. Do you find them as a great way of resourcing information or for contacts?
I think contacts by far is what you really want to go to these film markets for. Unless you have a great film, you might be able to sell it for probably a fraction of what you paid to make the movie. But it's a great place to make contacts and to establish a name for yourself as a promising filmmaker or production company. So yeah, film markets by far. They're one of the remaining ways to get small indie films seen by a large group and written about.
Very cool. Because I find like also a lot of the seminars at the AFM to be extremely interesting and pumped full of information. Have you also been on any of the panels?
I was actually on a panel in Tenerife, in the Canary Islands.
Okay.
And it was a film. They were trying to establish a film marketplace there, and filmmakers of note and of high aspirant level show. It's a great place to share information and learn what's going on.
Yeah.
All right.
What do you feel like the next really big trend is in film, in terms of like all the areas that you're involved in? Can you tell us about some of your company's up and coming projects?
Yes, I have the film I referenced, which is we're out to major players and studios. It's a film called No Better Time, but I think the name is probably going to be changed. And it's a biography of a not well-known man who actually changed the world. And I've got 2 scripted TV pilots that are out and about and have a level of development with established network, some that we've talked about here, and 2 reality shows. Sorry, yes, I'm doing reality shows, but they're smart reality. There's nothing anywhere near the current.
We won't hold that against you. That's all right.
No, not at all.
Smart reality. It's meaningful stuff.
So it's like, what do you see or feel that what's like the next big trend in films is?
The next big trend, I hope, is that we have more meaningful content. That people like Amazon Studios produce things, nothing as dire as Manchester by the Sea, but things that are at the same level of meaningful. That move people, that really have people talking when they leave the studio, that kind of sensitize us again. That's what. So it's a hope. Whether it's a trend, I don't think so. I think the trend is really online. I think it really is with Amazon Studios, And Amazon Studios, the guy who runs Amazon Studios Features is a guy named Bob Burney, who's a big distribution guy. And he committed that every film they purchase and pay to produce will get a theater showing. So it's his kind of tipping the hat to the old time going to the theaters for meaningful films, and so you can talk with your neighbor about it. And they also promise to do meaningful films, things that are really good, starting with the script. And Bob, has made a commitment to screenwriters. So great thing. So that's where I see the trend, and I see people looking more and more to the Amazon Studios of the world to figure out who's doing what, and where do I want to spend my money, my entertainment consumer money. I think the studios have a lot to worry about as far as that's concerned.
Now, this is maybe just a little bit out there, but I'm just going to throw this out there for you. It's like, do you think the drive-in theaters, for when you talk about meaningful movies and stuff, do you think drive-in theaters will ever come back?
I love drive-in theaters. I've always loved the experience, but the problem with drive-in theaters is that it's really a rural experience, and all of the money you need to sustain it is in population centers. It's in order to have in order to build the image of the drive-in theater, I think you need to have large populations using them. So I don't know.
Olaf, come down to Florida here. We've got a 26 screen drive-in theater not 5 miles away from me.
Oh, that's great.
Well, that's like the reason. That's one of the reasons I brought it up is like I have. It's like it's a 2-screen drive-in. It's like 10 miles from me. That started out in 1952, and the fellow that owns it now, he bought it from his parents and took it over, and he's gone digital and all that stuff. So, I still love the drive-in. I very seldom ever go to indoor theaters. I go to the drive-in.
and I don't blame you. It's a great experience. It really is. Yeah. But it depends how you define coming back. Coming back meaning that you're doing well and people who own them are making money. If that's what you define it as, I think there's great potential for it. Mm-hmm. But you're coming back as being in every state and every city. I doubt it.
Wishful thinking, huh? Well, I saw an article where it's like they're somewhere in Tennessee. There's a project. They're going to build a kind of like a replica of a drive-in theater. But what they're going to do is you don't actually drive into the theater. They're going to have cars and stuff. It'll be like a movie set. And if you want to sit in a porch swing and watch the movie, you can. Or if you want to sit in a car, they have cars in there for you. That's the concept of it. And it's supposed to be up and running next year sometime.
Huh. Yeah, look, the problem is always real estate. If it's cheap real estate, then you can do it. The theater business, the movie theater business, when you look at valuations of movie theater chains, it's all in the real estate. It's not in the revenue they make.
It's true.
So if you have a 20-year lease on a little theater in a little town, that is your value right there. So drive-ins are limited by the cheap real estate.
Okay.
So I am currently in a partnership with a young woman who's making films and virtual realities. I do her script doctoring. I do one of the voices, but she's just getting started in this, and she's kind of trying to be an up-and-coming filmmaker. What words of guidance could you impart to someone like that?
My first and foremost advice I give to anyone who asks me is take names. So go to events and take names. I was working on I was helping a friend of mine with a book, and she asked me, what is the nature of synergy? And I said, well, there's a formula for synergy. Synergy is A plus C times L divided by V, and I'll explain. A plus C is availability plus context. You have to make yourself available. So go to film events, go to anywhere where you might meet anyone, and go there and be beyond yourself and make contacts. Say to yourself, I'm going to meet everybody in this room, and I'm going to take as many business cards or names or numbers as I possibly can. And that little formulation is times location. Unfortunately, I think some of you are geographically disadvantaged. If you're in Nebraska, it's tough to make contacts in the established film business. Maybe in the local film business, yes. But it's times L, big L. Location. You need to be where the content creation and distributors are. And you're divided by V, which is vision. You need to have a singular vision. If that value is 1, you increase the value of everything at the top. If you have 2 or 3 or 4 things that you're doing at the same time, it diminishes the effectiveness of everything at the top. So so my biggest advice is contacts, A plus C. Make yourself available. Go to every event where someone of consequence might be and take their name. That's my biggest advice.
All right. Thank you.
Sure.
So also, Michael, that being said, how do people get you in social media?
In social media, well, how do you get me in social media? The easiest way to get my attention is actually to go to my website and fill out the little placard. That sends me your contact information, your email, and then you can ask me questions. I'm really good about answering questions. If you have a reasonable question of me, I will answer it. And that's the easiest way. It's not on Facebook. It's not on Twitter. It's none of the above. Yeah.
So you want people directly contacting on your website if they have any questions for you as well?
Absolutely, yes.
That makes sense. It's like then that way it's like also you're able to promote forward. So is there any projects that you would love to tell us now in terms of this is our time for being able to shamelessly promote, and we can?
No, nothing yet. Nothing right now. But no. And the things I'm doing, talking about, split vision. I am doing these things on the content creation side, and that's under a company named Chaos on Craft. Symbiotic Entertainment describes the company I've had that has been doing predictive analytics and interactivity. And now Symbiotic Pictures is a production company, creating content for well-known people, companies, gaming companies, things like that. So the place to get me right now is Symbiotic Pictures.
Very cool.
That's the easiest way.
So Symbiotic Pictures. And Olaf, how do we get in touch with you on social media?
Well, you can stalk me on both Facebook and Twitter at Olaf Barbosa, but as I say, don't stalk too close because I do get nervous and I do have an itchy trigger finger.
And Arpo, how do we get you in social media?
Well, you can get me, of course, always on my Facebook page. You can get me at LinkedIn, at the Movies Underground forums, and coming soon, as soon as I finish my spring cleaning around here, I will be starting the Rich Posh Productions website.
Very cool. And you can get me on social media on Facebook, LinkedIn, Bizipedia, Twitter. Honestly, on the website, www.pastlivesproductionsinc.net, through iHeart, as well as also through this YouTube channel as well. As I often say, if you can't find me, you're not stalking me hard enough. There's 3 pages of footage for our show. and all 12 podcasting networks that are carrying us as well. And I wanted to thank you so much, Michael. And will you promise to come back for us?
Sure.
And also, it's like, especially if there's like something great coming up on the pipeline for you.
Absolutely.
Fantastic. And please join us on Friday when we are going to continue our talks over on Movietime, and we will be seeing you then.
Great.
And thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for watching.
See ya.